I worked with a boy my age. We were then, I think I was 17 or 18. Ben was 19. Ben Roberts. I met him. He was an aspiring writer. The only thing he'd ever written was a Leon Errol short, and I hadn't written anything. In the beginning, we worked in Hollywood. We wrote 5 original stories. I would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and work on stories, and Ben would work on it. We'd collaborate. None of them sold. Finally, one day, Ben came to me, and he said he had talked to a producer named Ted Richmond, who later became a partner of Tyrone Power in making movies. But at that time, Ted worked for a company called Producing Releasing Corporation, PRC. He asked me, he said Ted was interested in the story we had just written, and he asked me to meet with him and talk to him about it. It was called South of Panama. So I met with Ted, and he said, yeah, we want to buy it. We'll give you $750. That's for the original story, and you have to write a screenplay. So I said, that's great. I said, would you give us $800 because we divide the money, then we can divide it evenly? And he said, no. So I went back to Ben, and I said, I think we have a deal. And there was an agent named Ray Crossett, who was the story editor for the Leland Haywood Agency, probably the biggest agency in Hollywood. I mean, they handled everyone from Garbo to Gable. And I said to Ray Crossett, we've just sold our first story. He said, who'd you sell it to? And I said, PRC. And this man, who was with the biggest agent in town, said, what is PRC? He had never even heard of it. That's how small it was. Way below Monogram and Republic. So I told him what the deal was. He said, well, have you finalized your deal? Because I'd like to sell it elsewhere. And I said, you can't do that. I'd have to ask Ted first because, I really feel an obligation to him. So I said, well, call Ted and tell him you want to get out of the deal. So I called Ted. He was busy cutting a Henry Arbetta movie. Didn't call me back. I called him all afternoon. Finally, at 5 o'clock, I called Ray Crossett, and I said, Ray, I can't reach him, and we don't really have a deal because I'm asking for $800. He's offering $750. And he said, don't worry about it. I sold it to Paramount 2 hours ago. You got $1,000, and you don't have to do the screenplay. I said, oh, we want to do the screenplay. He said, no, you don't understand. They don't want you to do the screenplay. That was our first. I felt guilty because I'd sold this from under Ted's nose. So I called him at home that night. And because I felt defensive, I went on the attack. I said, Ted, you almost cost us a sale. I tried to get you all, and I have him apologizing. I said, but you're in luck. Ben and I have a story that's even better that we'll give you. And he said, great, meet me tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at the Pig and Whistle with the executive producer. And I hung up and turned to Ben and said, we have to think of a story. We had nothing. So we sat down and created a story. We worked until 5 in the morning. I typed it up, and I got up at 7 to read it. And you wouldn't think you could write a decent story under those circumstances. You'd be right. It was terrible. But I had no choice. I took it to Pig and Whistle, met with them, kind of hid my head while they read. Each had a copy. And they both finished at the same time and said, wonderful, and they bought it. So Ben and I sold 2 stories within 12 hours.